Time for our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. We have the latest developments now on the unrest in Egypt. General, as of Monday, 2,400 Americans have contacted U.S. officials about leaving the country. I think one thing that there is a major concern here is a possible military takeover in that country.
You're right. You know, anytime there's a possibility of bringing harm to U.S. citizens, the normal consequence is they need to leave. If it's their request or they're invited to leave, they can, in fact, leave with any kind of commercial air that's going out of that area. But it's not unusual for the United States military. In this particular case, they already had some U.S. Air Force aircraft on the ground, but it's not unusual to bring in other aircraft from the United States to be able to take them out of the country.
Well, over 200 have left on special flights, over 100 on military planes. So is that the special flights you're talking about?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's common.
In this particular case, there was already an Air Force plane on the ground, but if it continues to escalate, they would call in more Air Force vehicles and equipment to bring them out of the country.
What happens if they lose respect with the police or even the military?
You know, I think right at this point they have lost respect for the police. We've seen that in some cases the police have been looked upon by not being trusted by those who are protesting. Unlike the respect they have for the military, they're looking at it as being able to be trusted, because in Egypt it's a conscription, and so what they see in the military uniform is their neighbor, their cousin, and their relative, unlike the police, who are there for a different reason.
Well, we've seen the police, too, drop their weapons, take their uniforms off, and go to the other side. What does that say?
It tells you that, I mean, they'll go to whatever side that they think has leverage at that particular time, and therefore they've lost the trust and confidence of the people they're supposed to be protecting.
What happens if there is a military takeover?
If it's a military takeover, you could have a military coup. We've seen in other countries, certainly. You would hope that the military itself would be allegiant, loyal, and certainly give their allegiance to whoever the individual is in charge. Unlike the police departments and the police and security forces, they don't necessarily have to maintain any kind of loyalty to the military chain of command.
You know, we were talking about people leaving. I think a major concern here, General, is they're going to Turkey or possibly Greece, and they're telling people to take supplies with them. They could be there for a long time. There could be absolute chaos in other countries, and that could cause terrorists to do something.
Yeah, Mike, you're very observant, and that is a major concern, in my opinion. I think when you talk about having, thousands of people get on a commercial aircraft without recourse to going through the normal security procedures and inviting them to bring packages, I mean, that could really open the door for, a radical Islamist unit to get in and take advantage of that particular small window. So all they need to do is to do it once, and it will be very effective. We need to be sure 100% of the time that that's not going to happen. Tough situation that we're looking at.
The United States is kind of in a tough situation here too, General. They've backed Hosni Mubarak in the past. The United States is all for democracy, so we're kind of on both sides of the fence here.
We have, but that's not unusual in the Mideast. We've backed other regimes, dictatorships, because we felt as though being our ally was more important at that particular time. But at the same time, we've always made a strong effort to try to get them to come over to democracy, and that's always been one of the at least the emphasis that we've used, in addition to giving them foreign aid. So, in as much as we seemingly are talking both sides of our mouth, and we are, we need to hopefully understand that the option, if a radical Islamist group gets in, we don't want a theocracy in the area. So you have to play, and hopefully that the Egyptian people themselves would recognize the right way to go is to have as close as they can get to a democracy and stay away from a theocracy.
Well, President Barack Obama is pushing Mubarak to institute a set of key reforms. One of them would be the presidential elections when they come up in September.
Yeah, correct. And I think what he's doing now is, naming a vice president, it falls far short of what the protesters are looking for. They're looking for change right now, and it has to do with the majority of that country is below age 30, and the majority of those below age 30 are without jobs. And that's what they're looking to, is economic change, and they know that the current regime is not going to supply that, and just naming somebody to be his successor doesn't fit the bill.
Well, you're talking about the economy here, General. Tourism is taking a real hit right now in Egypt. 16 million people usually go through Cairo's international airport. 15 million are tourists, and we're already seeing American Airlines, Delta, and all those other airlines that they're canceling flights because of this.
Yeah. If you look at the strategic place of Cairo, I've gone into Cairo several times when I was on the way to not only Kuwait but Afghanistan and Iraq. That's a central point, and it's a jumping off point for different places within the Mideast. So it does have a tremendous magnet effect of bringing tourism into Cairo. I mean, that's the bed of a lot of our world history right there, between the pyramids and all of the other considerations that are part of that particular culture. But it does affect tourism because that is a central point for the Mideast, if you will.
Yeah, it's also affecting the price at the pumps and oil prices too.
Huge.
Oil prices right now are over $100 a barrel.
Exactly. And I think if we get into the strategic aspects of Cairo versus the cultural tourism aspects of it, although Egypt does not produce much oil itself, it does have a major effect on the flow of oil, being Egypt does control the Suez Canal, and it does control a pipeline that supplies up to, I think, 200 million gallons a day through that particular pipeline. That's a strategic point and needs to be protected. And I wouldn't put it past, if this turns into a more than it is right now, the United Nations will probably look at that as a place to ensure that it doesn't fall into the hands of Islamists.
Well, the Defense Department hasn't been asked to involve themselves yet, but I would imagine they're watching this closely and there's some type of plan in place.
I can guarantee you there are. I've not seen it personally, but knowing that there are always contingency plans on the what if. There is a plan, I'm convinced, that if the Suez Canal and that pipeline were to be compromised, there is a plan that the United Nations would have to take over and not allow that to get in the hands of radical Islamists.
Well, we also have Navy carriers in the Middle East region, too.
Absolutely.
So how quickly could they deploy to something?
I think, we've had the concept of a rapid deployment force for several years now. So I'm convinced, too, that we would be able to bring forward a significant number of military to be able to deal with those specific places, not only the pipelines, but the Suez Canal itself.
We're also seeing internet interruptions there with all the riots and the protests.
Yeah.
This is a key thing because they could also affect the stock market, banks, and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's been one of the main points that the protesters are looking to. All of their information is gotten through the internet and their cell phones, and as well as some TV and some radio. But when you cut them off, that just exacerbates it, and therefore that just grows more contempt for the existing regime, and specifically Mubarak.
Where does this leave Israel at this point?
Israel, I think, is standing by with clenched fist, hoping that nothing is going to go further, and especially because Egypt now has, to some extent, lessened the security within the Gaza Strip. They've allowed no weapons to get through, to become, obviously, a concern for Israel. With that lessening of security, we're not sure how many weapons have gone into the Gaza Strip to become eventually in the hands of the radical Palestinians to be used as an offensive against Israel.
Is there Islamic influence in all of this?
Absolutely. You talk about the Islamic Brotherhood, which is not the mainstay of the concern. It's the radical Islamists that would like to see a theocracy within Egypt, as they would in all the Mideast countries. And I think that's a real concern that we need to be very aware of.
Okay, General, as always, thank you for your time.
Good to be here.
Okay, thanks for watching.